Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into why monetization isn't just, back office plumbing. It's actually the very foundation of a business moat. If you're building a marketplace, a B2B platform, B2C, or even vertical SaaS where commerce and fintech matter, you already know that every single design decision you make eventually becomes a financial decision. How you build trust, how you move the money around, and most importantly, how you price your platform's value, all of it is going to show up in the numbers. So today, we're unpacking what is easily the single most debated financial decision in any marketplace business.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to start by looking at the take rate illusion. Then we'll contrast fragile toll booths with real moats, outline exactly how the value moment method works, run through the Substack stress test, and finally look at what happens beyond that core transaction. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The take rate illusion.
We've got to start by exploring a concept that is almost universally misunderstood by builders and founders alike, the take rate. Now, by definition, it's just the percentage cut a platform takes from every transaction. Sounds incredibly simple, right? Well, it rarely is. You see, most founders treat this take rate like a benchmarking game. It's just a number they pick, defend, and frantically compare against competitors to avoid churn. They panic that if it's too high, their suppliers are going to leave. But if it's too low, the business just bleeds money. So they try to find some middle ground and basically cross their fingers, treating pricing less like a real strategy and more like throwing darts while blindfolded. But as we're about to see, that is entirely the wrong frame of mind.
This demands a massive paradigm shift. You ready? You don't set a take rate, you reveal one. Take rate isn't something you just dictate from a spreadsheet, it's something you actually have to earn. Think of it as the market's real-time readout. It's a literal verdict on how much value you've actually built for the people transacting on your platform. If you get this backwards, you're just constantly going to be fighting competitive pressure and dealing with a supply side that feels totally nickeled and dimed. But if you get it right, your take rate becomes your ultimate moat.
Moving on to Section 2. Toll booths versus moats.
Listen, if your absolute only value is just connecting buyers and sellers, you're in trouble. We're really looking at a tale of two sequences here. In the outside-in approach, you set your price by immediately looking at the other guys, matching their percentage, and calling it a day. And what happens? Well, 6 months later, your supply churns heavily because you never actually earned that rate. You acted like a vulnerable toll booth, and guess what? Toll booths always attract competitors promising a cheaper toll. Now contrast that with the inside-out approach. In this sequence, you ask first what a supplier actually needs to feel like your platform is indispensable. Maybe it's higher demand quality, or maybe it's way faster payouts. You build that indispensable value first, and only then do you open up the pricing spreadsheet. The result? A highly defensible moat with really strong retention. It's the exact same industry, but with completely different outcomes. It all comes down to sequencing.
All right, Section 3. The value moment method.
So how do we actually find this defensible rate without just copying the competition? Well, we have to ask the side of the market that's paying us three very specific questions. The first one is, when did they feel it? You can't just ask generic questions like, hey, do you find our platform useful? You have to ask your power users to pinpoint the exact specific moment they felt the platform was actually worth paying for. What had just happened? What did they get from you that they couldn't easily get anywhere else? And the golden rule here is absolutely crucial. Price below that moment. Never right at it, because if you charge exactly what that value moment was worth, you're leaving no economic surplus for the customer. You want to leave them feeling like they just got a massive bargain because then they'll defend your pricing for you.
Let's look at how this plays out in the real world. For Uber, that exact moment users felt it was a car pulling up in under 3 minutes. Pure magic. For early eBay sellers, it was selling a super niche collectible, like say a slightly damaged Pez dispenser they thought was basically garbage, to some highly interested buyer all the way across the country. These platforms didn't just connect two sides, they literally created entire markets that physically and legally did not exist before. Now that is a massive value moment.
Okay. The second question you've got to ask is, how often does that moment repeat? Because a value moment that only happens once during onboarding, that's incredibly fragile. A truly defensible take rate requires a value moment that repeats on every single transaction, every single week, or every single payout.
Take DoorDash, for example. Their real value moment for restaurants wasn't just some vague "we bring you customers" pitch. It was specifically that they brought in extra revenue on a Friday night when the restaurant's dining room was already completely full and they'd otherwise literally have to turn paying people away.
For DoorDash, that repeating weekly frequency is exactly what separates a sticky take rate from one that churns the second a cheaper sales rep from a competitor knocks on that restaurant's door.
And the third question in our method is, what does free look like to them? Ignore competitor pricing for a second here. Look at your user's outside option. You have to ask how much worse off they'd actually be if your platform simply vanished tomorrow. That gap between your platform and their totally free outside option, that is your absolute pricing ceiling.
To put this into perspective, there was an Uber driver in India who perfectly explained this concept. Now, in a market where take rates are notoriously hard to justify, he could have easily waited outside the airport for free local rides. But he stays on the Uber app, despite the fee, for the predictability. He gets a vetted customer, a total guarantee of actually getting paid after a long ride, and dispute support. The free outside option was just way riskier. It's the same story with Etsy sellers. Historically, they've tolerated fee increases because, sure, they could go build a cheaper Shopify site for free, but nowhere else gave them access to a massive global buyer pool specifically hunting for handmade goods. Their outside option was functionally worse.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Substack stress test. Let's stress test this whole framework against one of the cleanest yet most polarizing models in the creator economy right now, 10%. That is Substack's flat platform fee. Writers can publish all they want for free, but the exact moment they turn on paid subscriptions, Substack takes 10%. Now, this sequencing is entirely deliberate. Substack builds the value first through their distribution tools and recommendation network, and they only charge that fee once the value turns into real, cold, hard revenue for the writer. But here's where it gets fascinating. The perception of that exact same 10% fee changes drastically based on the value being provided. Let's look at two completely different writer profiles. For an organic writer, where Substack is actively driving 40% of their growth, that 10% is viewed as a highly efficient marketing tax. Substack is seen as a true growth partner. But fast forward to when a writer scales up to, say, $500,000 in revenue, and they're bringing 100% of their own external audience over from Twitter or LinkedIn, suddenly that 10% becomes a massive $50,000 annual bill. At that point, Substack stops looking like a partner and starts looking a lot like an expensive software toll booth. And that triggers what we call graduation risk, where they jump ship to flat fee alternatives. So the takeaway here is absolutely crucial. Your users will happily pay while the network value is there, and they will leave the second it isn't.
Finally, Section 5, Beyond the Core Transaction.
While the core take rate usually gets the lion's share of the headlines in the tech world, it's really just layer 1 of value capture. Some of the most durable marketplace businesses on Earth actually generate way more margin from adjacent monetization layers than they do from the core transaction fee itself. We're talking about things like subscription tools, premium placement, lead fees, or even built-in fintech and logistical services. All these layers stack together to build a seriously deep moat around the entire business.
But across all of these different layers, the through line remains exactly the same. As the source material beautifully states, the monetization strategy that holds is the one where the person paying can feel exactly what they are getting. Ultimately, your pricing is really just a mirror, and it's reflecting the tangible, undeniable value that you've provided to your users.
So let's wrap this up with a quick thought exercise for you. I want you to think about a tool, a subscription, or a platform that you personally pay for every single month. Something you would deeply, deeply miss if it completely disappeared tomorrow. Got it? Okay, now ask yourself this final question. What was the exact moment you realized it was worth the money? Finding that answer is the key to unlocking your very own defensible take rate. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking for those value moments.